But today we have some exciting stuff for you. It's the 21st century, y'all, and we're going to be talking to the folks at Digitaize who have invented a MIDI controller that's also a violin. And if you're like me, you're kind of an old guy. You're like, listen, I don't know what a MIDI controller is. What exactly is a MIDI controller? It's an input device for your DAW, especially Ableton. And you can use this violin, what's up, Ernesto, as an input device as much as you'd use a keyboard or a mouse or a push, meaning that you can play notes and it will, the notes will go into your DAW just like you're playing an instrument. You can use it to trigger clips. You can use it to control any parameter. You can control volume, delay time, reverb level, your high pass filter, your pan, your distortion, chorus depth, the wah position. Any of this can be controlled with the instrument itself, which is super exciting. That's really cool. It's not like, before we would have to use pedal boards or buttons and all that. This instrument itself is the controller. I know this just looks like a regular violin, but you know what? There's some special stuff under the hood. All the electronics are underneath the fingerboard. And then the fingerboard itself, you can see how shiny it is. That's it's a touchpad. So this is 21st century stuff. Really exciting. So here's Rafal, who is in Vienna, and he's going to be hanging out with us today. What's going on, man?
Hi, Matt. Nice to see you.
Hello,
everybody. To be on this live stream. I'm very excited to share our work. We are a small startup company from Vienna, actually only 2 people. We are very excited to launch this product. So the main idea was to keep the instrument as it is. So you are still able to play on the violin as an acoustic instrument. So it doesn't interrupt you while playing. You don't really feel it or see it in the best case scenario, and that was the point we took into account while developing the product. And the idea was just to put the virtuosity we have. I was learning violin for years, playing scales, playing Bach, Mozart, you name it. And somehow, when I wanted to work in a DAW or work with some synthesizers, other instruments, I just had to switch always to a MIDI keyboard or stuff like that, and I couldn't really use my hands and my primary instrument. It was a pity because I felt the best on the violin and not on the piano. So this is how it began. So it's not only like a lot of stuff, a lot of data coming in and coming out, but it's also about the playability. So the controllers are making sense while playing. So it's not just a virtual thing. It's just something that you can really use while playing.
So I'm looking around. I get this thing and I'm looking around and I don't see a jack anywhere on this violin. Like there's no place to plug it in. There's this little guy that comes with it, this little USB thing.
Yeah. So everything, the whole electronic is hidden in the fingerboard itself, so you can't really see it much. There is the sensor foil which tracks the positions of the fingers on each string separately. So you have 4 paths. It's like as you said, like a touchpad. So you don't even need strings to play on that. You could also take the strings off and still play. There is this motion sensing motion sensor which tracks the position of the instrument and the acceleration of the instrument, the tilt. And there's also the audio microphone, so you can also amplify your instrument. And we have 2 ways of connecting it. The one is the Bluetooth MIDI, which is the standard nowadays. And in this protocol, you don't need this little guy. But you are in this mode. You can't stream the audio directly. You just stream the MIDI data. And with this guy, with this small dongle, we are switching to another protocol, which is more let's say, reliable than a standard Bluetooth, because I think most of people will agree that Bluetooth is far away from being reliable. And so that's why we developed this protocol where we can stream the audio from the microphone in real time, as well as the MIDI signal. So that's the idea behind it, and you can switch between those modes by pressing the button. It just within one button press you can switch between the custom radio version and Bluetooth.
Okay. Under here is where the button is, and there's also a USB connection here. You can see the button there. You probably can't see the USB with these lights, but that's where you would hook it up to charge the onboard battery.
The audio goes digitally to the computer, which means you don't need any preamps, any kind of audio sound card. And just to make kind of a proof of the concept that all you need to carry is this guy, and all the sensors on the controllers you can imagine you have already here. So there is no need of carrying any extra stuff.
So yeah, I would love for you to maybe take this thing for a spin and show us some of the things that it can do.
So let's start with the Digitaize app, which is the central part of the software. This is the place where you can connect up to 64 instruments into a single computer. Yeah. So here you can see the violin, the motion sensor, the bridge, and the tuner. And here we have all the settings for the MIDI. So you can see there are two different play modes. You can play by tapping it, so you don't need to use the bow. So it works like a keyboard, like a MIDI keyboard. Press here, I can play drums. So you can clearly see I'm using the violin, not really as a violin right now, because I'm just pressing on the fingerboard on the right positions, and it's translating it into the MIDI notes. So the big pros of that is if you are on a stage like with a drummer or bass player, whatever, you don't have to rely on a pitch to MIDI translation as in other instruments, because it's not really pitch to MIDI in that case. It's just a keyboard. But at the same time, the MIDI notes which are triggered are corresponding to the notes you're playing. So the G sharp here, it's G sharp in my Ableton Live session. I can use all four strings separately, which means each string is treated as a separate channel strip. So I can use all the strings for one channel, so I have one sound of all strings, but I can also set individual strings to individual sounds. So if you have a look here, I have a different. I'm playing on the G string right now, and now I'm going to the D string. I have different sounds. On this string, I have a different sound, and on the E string, I have. So you can see I can use the fingerboard as a pure MIDI controller. I can use a bow. If I switch to the bow mode, nothing will happen if I just press. Because it needs an envelope from the bow, the amplitude from the microphone. So that's actually the only difference. And once I'm playing and I reach a certain threshold, it starts triggering the notes I'm pressing. The MIDI will work always, regardless of the surrounding noises, because it's like a MIDI piano, like a MIDI keyboard.
And then one of the comments here from Matt Manweiler, who's a super high-tech dude, said bypassing pitch to MIDI is huge. Obviously, it eliminates a lot of potential glitchy kind of stuff that can happen on a stage, right?
Yeah, well, so that's the thing. Let me be honest here. That's a big game changer, obviously, because we treat this instrument not as a violin, but more as a MIDI keyboard. But it has also some consequences, which means you also have to train your hands to play like when you play a violin and you do slides. Sometimes you put another finger on the fingerboard and all of that stuff. You're not playing piano on the violin, so you're not taking care of putting like each finger in the right position in the right way. So at the first time playing with it, you just need, I mean, maybe 10-15 minutes just to get used to it, just to notice, like if I do pitch bending, how it behaves, if I play double stops, and so on. So if I play, so you can see the envelope growing here, and there is our threshold. So once the threshold is reached, the MIDI note will be triggered. So as simple as that. So you can control the noise around you with the threshold, and then you can set the gain, which means in MIDI the velocity range. So when you're playing with the bow, there is always this thing: what's the softest you can play, what's the loudest you can play, and it's always relative. So when you're changing the threshold, these dimensions also change. So that's why we decided to put also this MIDI gain, just to let people adjust it their way. And we also use the microphone envelope for the MIDI aftertouch. So you can also set up the rise and fall. So if I set the fall for very long time and I play just one note, pizzicato, like, you will see it's falling very slowly. So you can also, and it goes through MIDI to your DAW. Yeah, we can use the violin. As I said, the master channel means all strings go into this channel, and we can use individual strings for different MIDI channels. So we can route each string to a different channel to use different sounds, or however we like to have it. And we also have the MIDI MPE, and in the MIDI MPE, the whole thing behaves differently. All strings goes anyway to the different channel, and you can use then the newest MIDI MPE driven plugins. One other thing, maybe the last thing, is the MIDI control changes, because as I said, you can play any instruments. You can play drums, you can play synthesizers like this. I have a synthesizer right now, and I'm controlling it with the motion sensor. So I'm changing parameters of my massive synthesizer, and you can see here there's a cutoff of the synthesizer, and it's connected to the Y of this position of the violin. So if you can follow, I'm moving the violin both directions, and the cutoff is changing here. And there's also another parameter, which is some effects. It's like crash something. So if I change this position, this guy changes. So if I play something, I can play like. And of course I can play double stops. So. And on the violin, it's very natural to do this kind of, or to do a vibrato. Some people ask us about the vibrato on the violin. So it's solved with the pitch bend. We have the tone, And if you want to be always in tune as a violinist, it's also possible. All you need to do is just to turn off the pitch bend, because then all notes are chromatic and so. So now I'm not playing totally in tune, but the notes are in tune because the pitch bend is turned off. If you subscribe to our newsletter on the digitaize.eu, which is our website, you will get notified once we have the 5-string version.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So maybe another example, since what we have here, it's just a bunch of data coming from the sensors, right? So we can use each string for a different sound. We can play different instruments. We can use the motion sensor, but we can also use the strings not as a MIDI note controller, but rather than as a MIDI control change parameter. Like imagine you have 4 faders like in a mixing desk, and you're using the strings as a mixing desk. So you can change your dry wet parameters of the reverb, or you can make some crazy DJ stuff. And I'm not very good at DJing, but I prepared a small demo, so I can change the volume of each track, so it works like a regular controller. So if I, for example, I have a bunch of loops here, and I play like. So the possibilities are endless. It's like the same as with a MIDI keyboard. It doesn't come with any sound. It's just a MIDI keyboard. The same applies for Digitaize. It's a violin and a MIDI keyboard, and it has a bunch of sensors and stuff.
We are going to be carrying this stuff here at Electric Violin Shop, and yeah, super excited about that. It's a great product.
Cool. Thank you very much for your invitation, for your time, people who joined us, and yeah, for more info, just go to our website and you will find everything there.